Hi, this is Amanda for Lavinia World, and today we are going to be using a gel press to make the background for my card that you see here. I'm going to be using a 8x10 gel press and some cheap acrylic paints and some cheap cardstock from Hobby Lobby. I did decide to mix two different colors of teal and turquoise here, and I'm just putting the paint on my gel press so I can brayer it, mix it out, and just spread it onto the cardstock here. I wanted a background color for the background that I'm making here. So I'm just spreading it out and then brayering it on to the background cardstock here. I'm just taking my stencil that I'm going to use here and seeing what size I need to brayer out the colors. And then I'm just going to add more until I feel like it has filled in the area. I don't really need a smooth color, I guess. I don't really care that it's not mixed completely or anything like that. I just need the color to be filling in that area. So now I'm going to move on to the green here, and I'm going to cover my whole plate with this green and get that on there pretty smooth. You don't need a lot of paint here. You just want a thin, even coat to cover your whole gel press. And I do have an 8x10 gel press here. And I'm just going to cover that. And then I'm going to bring in the Foliage stencil. And this is one of the newly released stencils from Lavinia Stamps. I'm going to put that on there. And then I'm going to bring in a new piece of cardstock. And I'm going to take a print. And this is going to take the negative part of the print out. And I don't want the negative for my background that I'm creating here. And I did bring in my heat gun to dry off the background that I had put the blue on. And I do have a bucket of water sitting off to the side, and I'm putting my stencils in that because I don't have time to go to the sink and rinse off my stencils. And I like to keep my stencils clean. If you don't care that your stencils get all painted up, then that's your prerogative, but I like to keep my stencils clean. So there's the print, and that is the positive of the stencil, and that is exactly what I was looking for. So now I'm going to put some purple, metallic purple on here, Amethyst, and I don't care that my gel press is dirty. That just gives it more texture. And I'm going to cover the whole gel press with this too. Now this color is rather thin for whatever reason, so I'm just going to go with it. It doesn't matter. I'm going to probably put a little bit more on here, I think. Yes, I do. So I'm just going to put a little bit more on there, trying to get it a little less translucent, but it really didn't seem to help. But that's all right. It still shows up in the end. I'm just going to brayer that on, and then I'm going to bring in the coral stencil and put that over top. And we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to bring in another piece of cardstock that isn't the background that I'm going to use for the card and take that negative print off. And I'll show you that. This has happened to be a piece of cardstock that I had been working with earlier that I was kind of testing out how this was all going to work. And so it's got quite a bit of different colors and stuff here. So there's that one. And I'm going to take that stencil off and put it in my bucket of water. And then I'm going to take this positive print and put it onto the piece of cardstock that we had, the foliage one and the blue on there. And I'm going to take that print off. And so then we've got the blue background, which is going to represent the water. We've got the green foliage, which is, to me, kind of like the seaweed. And then we're going to have that purple coral. That's all going to be layered up on this. See? I think that turned out really cool. So then I cut it down to just under 5x7, because I'm going to be making a 5x7 card. And I'm putting this pebble stencil over the top of it. And I probably should have done this later, but I didn't. I'll talk about that a little bit later in the video, but if I was gonna do this card again, I would have waited until after I did my stamping, but that's all right. So I have a VersaMark Re-Inker here, and I'm just going to put a couple drops of the VersaMark onto my mat here, And I'm going to use a foam blending tool and pick that VersaMark up, and I'm going to put it through a few places in my stencil. And I thought that the pebbles kind of looked a little bit like bubbles, and so that's what this is going to represent to me. And I'm just going to, again, like I said, just work this into the foam blending tool and then put this in through some places in my stencil. And I went way overboard here, but that's all right. I'm just going to remove it a little bit in the end. So I'm going to bring in some of the newer distress glazes in broken china and cracked pistachio. And that's what I'm going to put over top. And you see me holding this up to the light, which was totally pointless because I used metallic paint. So the whole thing was shiny anyway. So I could not tell where I put the VersaMark on there and where I didn't because the whole thing was shiny anyway. But anyways, so now I'm going to bring in that cracked pistachio and I'm going to sprinkle it over the panel and get some of those bubbles going. And then I will get the excess off, put it back in the jar, and then we're going to come in with that broken china. So I have a little bit of a two-tone bubble effect going on here. Get that back in the jar. And then we're going to go in, like I said, with the broken china. Now, like I said, I went way crazy with the VersaMark here. And covered almost the whole thing with bubbles. And I was like, oh no, I did not mean to cover my whole background with this. And I really wasn't thinking, because I haven't used the glazes before. This is my first time using the glazes. I really wasn't thinking about them being translucent, and so it probably wouldn't have mattered anyway. I was thinking more along the lines of them being like regular embossing powders, and I didn't want to cover up my whole background. I mean, in the back of my mind, I kind of knew that they were translucent, but I was really afraid once I heat set it that I wasn't going to like the effect. That I was not going to like the fact that I covered up all that work that I just did with the gel press. So as you can see here, there's a lot of bubbles on there, or pebbles, or whatever you want to call them. But to me, they look like I was using them as bubbles. So as you can see here, I took a paintbrush and I wiped a good majority of them off. So here it is, all heat set and pretty and shiny, sparkly, whatever you want to call it. And now I'm coming in with this Jalandhar. I'm probably butchering that. And I'm going to stamp him on some Nina Classic Crest 80-pound cardstock because I'm going to be doing a little bit of Copic coloring here. And my camera cuts out here in just a second. I don't know what happened, but it did. And I didn't notice it for, I don't know, maybe 2 minutes. So I do not get the rest of the stamping. And my desk has a dip in it. There's nothing wrong with this stamp. I just have a hard time with big stamps because of the dip in my desk. So now I'm using one of these Fairyscapes. This one is the Fairy Wings. You can buy them individually or you can buy them in a bundle, I believe, of 6. So I decided to stamp the head of the jellyfish on that. And I'm going to do a little bit of shading with my Copic markers in C7, C4, and C2. So I'm just going to give him a rounded shape and give him some dimension with these gray markers. I learned this from my friend Renee over at Delaney Jane Cards. When she does paper piecing, she always shades her paper pieced parts to give them more dimension and a little bit more interest. I did go a little bit overboard with my shading. I probably went a little bit too dark, and so in the end, the stamped lines don't show up real well, but I will fix that later. You'll see how I fix that. I went way too heavy-handed here. So I'm just going to finish up the shading here, and he does look, maybe it's a he, maybe it's a she, who knows. But he does look dimensional in the end, but like I said, the lines tend to get a little lost when I'm done. But I do like the look of him. I think that this Fairy Hugs paper pad, or well, it's not really a pad, it's individual sheets, and it's printed on very nice cardstock. I love the design of it, and I thought that it was a fun use of it, just to use it as the head of the jellyfish instead of using it as a typical background. I think most people are probably going to use it as a background, but I thought it would be fun to use it as the head of the jellyfish. So I'm just blending it out here. I believe this is the C4. And then I'm just going to come in with the C2 and finish up the blending real quick. And then we will be on our way to the next part of the Copic coloring. And I'm not going to show all of that because it was very, very repetitive. We're just going to show just a little bit of that. With the way that I colored this, it would have been very choppy if I would have cut it out. So we're just going to watch this real quick and you can listen to me babble. But anyway, these are good quality backgrounds, and I highly suggest that you check them out. I will definitely be using them more in these videos, so you can see some more creative ways of me using these. So now we're just finishing up the C2, and I promise we will be on our way in just a second. All right, so here is the fully stamped jellyfish, and we're going to be doing some paper piecing with this as well. So I'm going to be using a purple combination here of V17 and V15, and I'm just going to be coloring these thicker tentacles. I'm not really sure if they're called tentacles on a jellyfish. Somebody's going to have to let me know that if they're more knowledgeable than me. But the shading on this jellyfish is very, very easy because the shading is already drawn in for you. So it does not take any thought process at all to figure out where your shading goes. You just put it on the little shaded lines at the top and the kind of the little bottom where there's little tick marks. And then you can blend out with your liner color. So I did decide to do like a two-toned jellyfish tentacle. At the top I did purple, and then towards the bottom of his tentacles I did like a blue-green combination. So I'm just going to show you a couple of these purple ones, and then I'm going to show you where I blended into the blue-green combination, and then I'll just show you a couple of the blue-green ones, and then we're going to move on to the next part of the card. So I just thought it would be fun to paper piece this little, well, he's not little at all, paper piece the jellyfish together and make him look cool and kind of almost match the head of the jellyfish because it had some blues and greens and some different colors in it, but he doesn't exactly match. So this is where I am blending into the blue-green color. So I'm just coming in with the BG18 and BG11 and blending it into the purple colors. I did have to work it a little bit to get it to blend, those colors to blend together, but in the end it does look nice, I think. So on one tentacle I went into the blue-green color about halfway up the tentacle, maybe a little over half, and then on the other one it's more towards the bottom, so it definitely doesn't match completely, but I just picked one of like the longer sections, and that's where I decided to blend it because some of them are really quite narrow. So I just picked one of the more wider sections, and that's where I decided to blend the two colors. It really was no other reason to my madness. And again, here's where we're going to blend into the blue-green, or we're changing to the blue-green color. And you just, like I said, you just put it in where the shading lines are. The artist did a very good job on shading this. If you didn't want to color him, you don't have to because the shading lines are already there, already built in for you. But since I do like to Copic color, I'm very excited about this new release because there are quite a few stamps that you can color. And I guess you don't necessarily have to use Copics. You can use whatever medium that you prefer, but I've definitely been into the Copic colors lately, so it was nice to see some stamps that aren't just silhouettes in this release. So we're just going to finish up this last little bit here, and we're going to move on. So now this is where I should have waited for to add the glazes, because stamping over the glazes was not fun at all. I cut out the many times I had to stamp over this to try to get a nice impression. But I did have to stamp this many times, not only because, like I said, my desk has a dip in it, but also because stamping over those glazes was very difficult. And even then, I did have to go in a few places around the left bottom of his head. I mean, if that's even what you call a jellyfish's head, but I don't know. I did have to go in with a Sharpie and kind of fix a little bit of his head and a couple of his tentacles there. So I'm just going to paper piece his the Copic colored tentacles right on top of the ones that I stamped onto the card panel. And then I'm going to pop up his head to give him a little bit of dimension. And I did decide that, as you can see there, the dark lines on his head really didn't show up very well. So we are going to fix that as well here in just a second. Right, as soon as I get these glued down. This was a slick surface because of the acrylic paint, so it did take a second to get those lined up and get them to stay. I am using Distress Collage Medium in matte to glue these down because of the acrylic paint. I find that that glue works best over odd surfaces. My Distress Collage Medium is in a Nuvo Deluxe bottle because those bottles don't hurt my hands. I have nerve problems in my hands, so for whatever reason, the shape of that bottle just doesn't hurt my hands. As you can see, there's where I went over the areas with the Sharpie. So now I'm taking a Sakura Jelly Roll pen and just going over those stamped black lines of the jellyfish head. And then this is all I'm going to show you is right there because that was kind of tedious. And now we're just going to pop up that jellyfish head and get him situated on there. And I think that popping it up really gave it, kind of brought it to life. It, you know, the dimension was good. Definitely gave it a little bit different look instead of just gluing it straight down. I probably would have popped up the tentacles too if they weren't such thin, tiny little pieces, because I really don't like dealing with thin, tiny pieces of foam tape. For the sentiment, I decided I didn't really have any Lavinia stamps that I felt really went with this card. So I printed a Go With The Flow on my laser printer, and I foiled it with some Amethyst deco foil. I believe it's actually called Amethyst watercolor. You can't really see it in the video at all. It just looks like it's black, but it is purple, and it goes really nicely with the card. So I did ink blend that a little bit with Lucky Clover, so it wasn't so stark white, and I'm just going to glue that straight down to the card. And that finishes up the card for today. I want to thank you for watching. Don't forget that the links for all the products found in the Lavinia World store are linked in the description box below. The link for the Lavinia World store is linked in the description box below, along with the Anything Lavinia Facebook group. I welcome you to join us over there. Also, the links for my personal YouTube channel and social media links are also linked in the description box below. And as always, have a great day.